Hello there. This is Amelia Coffee. I am here to talk about how our society kind of approaches and accommodates those with disabilities, physical disabilities, mental disabilities, um, just kind of the overall societal approach to people with disabilities was this week's um, assignment. And as I've been kind of meandering through life this week, I've been on April break, so I've had a lot of kind of time to reflect, observe, and kind of just think about society and those with disabilities. So I thought about multiple different things. I live in Portland, which is a city, and I work in Cumberland, which is a small town. I've also been to large cities. I've also been to other countries. So I feel I can come at this with multiple different kind of perspectives. So, for starters, I feel that physically, our society is pretty accommodating. You see ramps, you see elevators in schools, you see Braille on the elevators or the door signs. You see hearing phones in airports, phones in the library, phones in public transit. If you need to kind of have a hearing assist. You see different colored sidewalks to signal that a handicapped vehicle needs to park here. You see handicap parking. Um, there's a general awareness for people that are blind with their red and white walking sticks. There are caution signs if somebody that's blind lives on on a drive or on a road. Um, so I feel that our society accommodates people with disabilities on a physical stance. What I do feel is lacking is an overall kind of like true inclusion goes beyond physical accommodations. It demands societal attitudes that genuinely value the experiences of disabled people. This stigma and this implicit bias and ableism is still deeply affecting employment rates, educational outcomes, healthcare access, social participation for people with disabilities. For instance, like let's say, you know, despite anti-discrimination laws, people with disabilities experience, you know, disproportionately high unemployment rates. It's just, there are laws in place, there are stigmas in place, and there are things and protections in place, but you're not seeing a disabled bank teller. You're not seeing, you know, a lunch lady in a wheelchair. You're not seeing someone who's blind as your bartender. So I guess that maybe that last one wasn't probably a good example. I mean, but it's just kind of proving the point that there's so much more that we could be doing as a society. Kind of being a little bit more accepting as opposed to just building a ramp outside your building. How about you hire them? Like, I think that this idea of creating the best experience for someone who has disabilities is really important and something that kind of goes to the wayside when we think about how accommodating we are as a society. Um, the other day I was volunteering and a man walked in with a very large Great Dane service animal. And the way he maneuvered through the store and his access to everything he needed, I was just kind of astounded by. And it really made me think, like, let's say this was in the 70s and a man needed to walk around a hardware store where I was volunteering with his giant Great Dane in a wheelchair. I feel like that he wouldn't have had as many opportunities in the 70s, okay? Or possibly the 80s, maybe even the 90s. But 2025, we've come to be a place that very readily accepts this and just knows that this is a clientele that could come into a store at any moment, or into the bank, or into the grocery store. So I feel like, we're working on it, but I also feel like there's been so many great strides towards people, or great strides when it comes to accommodating people with disabilities. There's two folds to this conversation I've been having. One, there could be more that we're doing. There could be more advocacy. There could be more focus on employment of those with disabilities. There could be more focus on the experience of someone who's disabled in this world. But on the other hand, I do feel that times have changed vastly in a good way for those with disabilities. And we're a much more accepting society for those with disabilities. For example, I went to Thailand in February, and God forbid you might need a service animal in a store. Not a thing there. If you have a disability that will require a service animal, not accepted there. If you needed a ramp at every building in Thailand because possibly someone with a wheelchair could come in, not always an option. In fact, often not an option. So just kind of, I think sometimes we really harp on inclusion and is the society inclusive enough? And there are a lot of flaws in America and in our political system and in our society. We do have some flaws. But when it comes to what other countries are doing for the disabled community, I feel America is ahead of the rest. I do. And I think there's a lot more opportunity in America than other countries around the world. I do. And, when I go to the city I live in and the small town that I work in, I'm experiencing the same level of care and accommodation for those with disabilities and the same kind of visibility for those with disabilities as well. I know this video went a little long, but I felt kind of passionate about some of these ideas. So thank you. Those are my thoughts and my reflection and kind of what I observed this week. So thanks.